Hello there, algebra students. Welcome to Chapter 9, Section 3. And we are going to be talking about solving quadratic equations now. We've been graphing them for almost a week. And now we're going to talk about finding solutions to them. Pretty valuable information for us here. So I'm going to be skipping some things. And on this front page, honestly, I think I could summarize it, what you need to know with a picture here. So put your name on your notes and then draw yourself a little coordinate plane like this. And I actually talked about this briefly last week, but we're going to kind of get the gist of what you need to know here. All right, let's put a parabola on here. Now remember, the parabola could be going up or down. And what we are looking for when we talk about solutions, okay, solutions to quadratics, we are looking for the value here and here where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, that's a solution. It's also called a zero, or it's also can be called a root. And we don't need to get much deeper than that. In the vocabulary builder here, it gets a little confusing. It's kind of semantics. The main thing that you need to know is you have to be able to find these points. Okay, if you're asked to solve a quadratic equation, you're finding that point. So it's like you have a function. Okay, you have some function like x squared plus x plus 1, and you're setting it equal to 0. Okay, because this is the value where y is equal to 0. Think about it. You're finding the x-intercepts, right? If you find the x-intercept, you are finding the points where y is equal to 0. For example, one possible solution could be 3, 0. That would be a point on the x-axis, and notice that the y value is 0. Okay, so if you can find the values where y equals 0, you found a solution, or you found a 0, or you found its root. So when asked to solve, you must set it equal to 0. And then we have several different ways of finding the solutions, one of which is graphing, but graphing is not a great one because we're going to start seeing decimal values. Okay, you can sometimes have two solutions, one solution, or no solution. And we have seen that last week a little bit, where here that would be two solutions. One solution would be a parabola where the vertex is on the x-axis, just one point. Or we could have a graph where the parabola did not actually touch the x-axis. That would be 0 solutions there. So those are all the possibilities of things we can run into. Okay, so today we're going to look at how to find those points, a method that is not graphing, which we need to know. Because if we are graphing something and it comes and the x-axis intercepts at, say, like 1.758, well, you're not going to know that just by the graph. So we need to find some algebra strategies to do that, and that's what we're looking at today. Before we can do that, you have to know this, that we've talked about. This should be reviewed, but the quadratic standard form, okay, standard form is this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Let me emphasize this right here, that it must equal 0. If it's not equal to 0, you have to use algebra, balance it out, and get that equal to 0. So number 7 says cross out equations that are not in standard form. Well, this one is, it's equal to 0, so he's going to stay. This guy is not, because it's not equal to 0. And this one is not equal to 0. There. So that's the only one on the left. The first one is equal to, is set in standard form. So if we were given this, let's just call this question 1, 2, and 3. They're asking you to put these 3 here into standard form. So if we took number 1, if we put that in standard form, but you would have to solve it for 0. So to get 0 on this side, and number 1, you'd have to subtract 5x from both sides. And you'd have to subtract 11 from both sides. That would zero everything out there. So if we did that, you'd have x squared. That's 3 minus 5. I'm not liking how I have everything squished here, but that would be minus 2x is what that would become. And 18 minus 11, that would be positive 7. It's this one right here. It's this bottom one. So if we were working that out, we would set it up neatly on our paper, I would hope, and work it out step by step. Number 2, if we did the same thing, you'd have to subtract x squared, and you'd have to add 1. So if you'd subtract x squared, that would become 2x squared. And if you subtracted 1, that doesn't have a like term, so it would just be minus 1. So this one goes with that top equation. And this one right here, this is a perfect square trinomial. We could actually use our old trick. Square the first one, square the last one. 2 times that would be 15 times 3 times 2 is 30. X, and that is this one right here. So you will have to be able to turn equations into standard form when they're not in standard form. Okay? Now, this part here, you can solve quadratic equations by a variety of methods. We're going to be learning several methods. Okay? The first way is graphing, like we did last week. If we were going to graph this one right here, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but we would find our vertex, which is negative 16. I've already done that, so we would end up plotting this point. This is how it worked out here. I've already done the points for you. It came out, it crossed right there, so that's the mirror point right there. So we would graph this. Yeah, that's pretty good for my airliner. Not so good on the left side. So there you have it right there. So that would be the graph. To find the solutions, remember we are looking for these 2 points where it crosses the x-axis as solutions. And this particular problem says, number 10, let's continue. Which part of the graph gives you the solutions? Well, the vertex is not the solution. The x-intercepts, those are the solutions. Not the y-intercepts and not the axis of symmetry. So this particular problem has 2 solutions. The solutions are negative 4 and 4 because it crossed the x-axis at negative 4 and 4. Now this is how we can write it in algebra, plus or minus 4. We actually write it like that, plus or minus 4. That means negative 4 and 4, or positive 4 and negative 4. That's what that plus or minus 4 means. And you're going to see that down the road here in a few days when we get to something called the quadratic formula, where the problems get a little bit more difficult than these today to solve. Okay, as I come up on the 8-minute mark, I think I'd like to stop this video here and do part 2 to show you. The method today you're going to be learning in this video is solving using square roots to find the solutions. So be right back to find those here after this.